Hey there, good evening. Welcome to Prog Monster. My name's Murph and I'm the host of this show. So here we are, 1980. We've begun episode 17. A bit of an unusual episode tonight. We'll be doing three people. I had two people in mind I wanted to do, but I definitely can't leave the third person out. They would have to probably go first before the other two. So anyways, we're doing them in the order, as I've always said, order from their passing. So the first one tonight we'll be doing is Bon Scott, legendary vocalist and singer of AC/DC. Ironically, they hit their greatest fame after his passing. However, I think they still would have been famous if he had lived or he had not lived. Anyway, so Bon Scott is long been one of my favorite vocalists, almost since the first time I heard him, which is now going on over 40 years. I've enjoyed his vocal style very much. So anyways, we'll just go through the vitals first. Just going to give my head a little rub here. Anyways, Bon Scott was born July the 9th, 1946 in Foxfair, Angus, Scotland. I've been making notes here, so I'm going to need to put my glasses on because I don't see well without them. Okay, he died February the 9th, 1980 in East Dulwich, London, England. Sorry, wow, my glasses are pretty bad here. Anyways, the music that he was known for was rock and roll, blues rock, and hard rock. The instruments he played was vocals, pipes, and apparently played the drums when he was playing in other bands early on. His years active were 1964 to 1980, so I'm just going to take these off now for a bit. Those are the vitals. His family moved to Australia when he was about 6 years old, and that was in 1952, where he picked up his nickname once he was going to school. They called him Bonnie Scotland, so the name stuck with him. Anyways, so he formed a band called Spectrum when he was in 1964, in which he played drums and occasionally did lead vocals. And then after a while, he formed a few other bands. He was actually part of a few other bands, Valentines and Fraternity. The Fraternity vocalist, I believe, the Valentine vocalist actually said that Bon Scott just had it in him right from the start to be something great. And he was a bit of a wild guy, I think. Eventually he replaced Daryl Evans as the lead singer for AC/DC, and this took place over a period of time as well, because he initially, when he went to see them, he liked them, but he just thought they were too young. And they, of course, thought he was too old, and they might be more right than he was. But anyways, they jammed together, and it became almost instantaneous that he was the guy. So then they started pretty much performing together as a group. The Young brothers and him did most of the writing, and they released it. I think they had about 4 albums or 5. They had Live Wire, High Voltage, Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, of course, Highway to Hell, and there was another one in there which I'm drawing a blank on right now. I'm not really sure, but I think there might have been another one other than those 4. Anyways, each album they were getting bigger and bigger. They started making their way in Australia, where they were from, and then they started hitting international fame as they got bigger with the Highway to Hell album, which was at that point one of their biggest albums. It was in the top 20 on the U.S. Billboard Top 100. So anyways, how was I going to say this? So anyways, after he died, which was on December the 19th, 1980, of acute alcohol poisoning. He drank himself to death, I guess. He was it was a bit of a devastating blow to the band AC/DC, and they actually considered for a while about breaking up the band because, you know, it's pretty hard to replace a guy like that, somebody who's so dominating and such a great front man and so much integrated into the group. It'd be pretty hard to replace him, especially when they had just achieved such status with their Highway to Hell album. But after discussing it for a while, they decided that he would have wanted them to continue. So they went out and they recruited a guy, Brian Johnson, who he actually had recommended as being a really good vocalist that he liked quite a bit. So they replaced him. They replaced himself with a guy who he liked. So I don't think Bon Scott would have had any problem with what happened. So they then recorded the Back in Black album about 5 months after his death, and it became an instant success, one of the biggest grossing albums of all time, over 30 million copies. I don't know whereabouts it is on the charts, but it's got to be in the top 10 of all time for sure. Anyway, so Bon, the things about Bon I really like the most is that he's such a charismatic frontman. You know, he's when you're watching the stage, you're watching him. Even though Angus Young is trying to compete as well, I just found Bon Scott to be like a quintessential frontman for a band. He had a kind of a unique voice. I like this voice quite a bit. He had a kind of a unique writing style too. It was kind of graphic, but kind of tongue-in-cheek, if you know what I'm saying. Like, he knew how to put things out there that you knew what he was talking about, but they were kind of funny. He had a kind of funny way of putting things. So I really liked him quite a bit. And as much as I liked Brian Johnson and I liked the Back in Black album, I think it's one of the best albums ever recorded. I still prefer Bon Scott. I just think he has more of a unique style to him. He's more of a front man. He's more of a charismatic guy. But anyways, I'm not trying to take away from Brian Johnson, who I think is a great vocalist. I'm just here to tell people that Bon Scott was a great rock vocalist, and I think definitely put Australia on the map as far as rock music goes. Yes, they had other musicians, but I don't think anybody's kind of achieved the success that AC/DC did with in Australia or worldwide for that matter. Anyways, one of my favorite bands and one of my favorite vocalists. Okay, so we're doing, the next guy we're doing tonight is one of my favorite musicians, definitely one of my favorite drummers. And of course, we're talking about Led Zeppelin's John Bonham, also known as John, well, his name was John Henry Bonham, but he also went by the name Bonzo. A real heavy drummer, you know. I often get in kind of arguments with people because they will say that, well, Bonham can never play that or he can never play this because he's too heavy. Well, a guy of that stature and that quality and that greatness in his drumming, they can adjust to anything. I think if he had played in a band that required him to tone his drums down, he would have been able to do it. Now, would he have wanted to do it or not, that's a totally different story. You know, when you're used to being a heavy drummer, you want to play in a heavy drumming band, and he might have played in some bands that didn't require heavy drumming. He could have done it, but I don't know how long he would have stuck with something like that. But at any rate, he was a heavy drummer, often using the phrase tree sticks. You know, he had these like lumber things. He was also one of the thing I most remember about him is his triplets. He was one of the first drummers, I think, to really master the triplets, and he was very good at it. So anyways, let's just do his vitals first. I'll need my glasses for this. Okay, so he was born May 31st, 1948 in Redditch, I can never get this name, Worcestershire, England, and he died September 25th, 1980 in Clewar, Berkshire, England. Of course, his rock was his music genre, and of course he was a drummer and a percussionist. He was active from 1962 to 1980, and he has one sort of famous family member, which is his son Jason Bonham, who also played the drums and also played the drums for Led Zeppelin in a couple of different concerts, and actually did an amazing job. I thought he sounded just like John. So, and he has his own band called Bonham. He plays in a few other things as well. So, yeah, hats off to Jason Bonham as well. Okay, how it started with him is that Jimmy Page of the Yardbirds had left and was trying to form a new band, which originally was going to be called the New Yardbirds, but ended up with the moniker Led Zeppelin eventually, after listening to Keith Moon, apparently. Anyways, Page recruited Robert Plant as the vocalist, and then Robert Plant recommended John Bonham as the drummer. So Page had some other ideas of who he wanted, but went to see John Bonham played, and then said, "This is the guy. He fits in very well with us." And he tried to get him to join, and John wasn't so sure at first because he had other gigs set up with other musicians, and I know one of them, and then it just left my mind. Anyways, he decided that eventually he decided he liked the music that Led Zeppelin was going to play more than Joe Cocker was the guy I was thinking of, than what Joe Cocker was doing. So he decided to join the band. He was also the best man at Tony Iommi's wedding. Cool, eh? Great guitarist, great drummer. Wonder what he would have sounded like with Led Zeppelin, with Black Sabbath. Hey, that could have been pretty awesome. Nothing against Bill Ward, he's a great drummer, but I think that he's not really in the same league here. Yeah, so the things I like a lot of the tracks that Led Zeppelin does that are heavier, I think sound great, primarily because, not just because of the the guitar riffing, but primarily because of the heavy drums that Bonham brought to the stage. I just think that at the time in the 70s, he was probably considered the best drummer in the world. And there's people that'll argue he still is. I don't feel that way about him. He's not my personally favorite drummer, but again, it always comes back to the same thing. Whatever you like, whatever's your favorite, that's your favorite, and my favorite cannot be your favorite. Well, it could be, but for the reasons I like John Bonham may not be the same reasons other people like him. That's just the way it is in life. There's some things that you like quite a bit that maybe other people don't get at all, and then other people will tell you, "Oh, you should like this. Why don't you like this? What's wrong with you?" It's just how you feel about it at the time. A lot of it I think is emotional too, so it depends on the context before that you get into a band. So John Bonham died, and Led Zeppelin. Wow, I'm tired again tonight. And Led Zeppelin decided to not continue, and I really like that they did this. A lot of bands would continue, and be rightly so. It's all different for every band, but I think it would have taken away from Led Zeppelin. Nobody could have really replaced him. He had a very unique style, and it suited Led Zeppelin perfectly. It would have been very difficult to put another drummer in that position. I mean, I'm sure there's guys out there who could do it. Jason did a fantastic job. And I'm sure that at given time, Phil Collins could have learned everything and made a difference in that concert too. But this is a guy that was at the top of everything in the 1980s, so really didn't get that opportunity to do that. So, and plus he's become a bit of a whiner over the years. But anyways, I still think that given a chance, he could have learned it too, because he's a fantastic drummer as well. But anyways, they decide to call it quits and go and end Led Zeppelin. And it's no coincidence that Rush did the exact same thing when Neil Peart died. Maybe even more so because there'd never been anybody for 40 years other than the three of them. But they took the lesson from Led Zeppelin. It's time to end it when it's ended, right? The only thing good about Rush that I like is they also don't have any music in the vault, so nobody's going to be dragging some half-beaten song out and putting it on an album somewhere. Unfortunately for Zeppelin, that did happen, and I'm sure that they didn't want it to, but it did anyways, because money always talks, right? Okay, so there you have it. John Bonzo Bonham, legendary drummer for Led Zeppelin, who created that sound that so many drummers tried to emulate, and so he had a lot of stuff carried forward from him. So now we're going to go on to the third star here. Now these two I was going to choose no matter what, but there's no way on earth I could leave this guy out. So if I had to stick with the two, I would have had to drop one of my favorites in order to put him in, because he has to be in here. There's just no two ways about it. And we're talking about John Lennon. Very few musicians have had the kind of impact that John Lennon has had on rock music. I would almost go as far to say if the Beatles didn't exist, a lot of these other bands would never come into existence either. So gotta give him his due. He may be one of the greatest musicians of all time. Certainly one of the most influential and one of the most notary people of that rock genre. Anyways, John Lennon, of course, was born on October the 9th, 1940 in Liverpool, England, along with the rest of the Fab Four. He died December the 8th, 1980, at the age of 40, by gunshot wound in New York City. Of course, he was a pop, experimental rock artist. He played vocals, guitar, and keyboards, and I do recall somebody saying that he actually played drums on he played some drum tracks on the last album by the Beatles, Abbey Road. And there's also talk that Paul McCartney did too. The joke used to be that Ringo Starr was the third best drummer in the Beatles. I know it's a joke, just ignore it. Years active, 1956 to 1980, and he was married the first time he got married, and then he was remarried to Yoko Ono, and they had two sons, Sean and Julian. Julian also had a hit song as well, which I have somewhere. Okay, so there's a lot that can be said about John Lennon. He was a great musician, a great songwriter, a member of one of the biggest bands in history. He also was a peace activist and wrote some of the best songs for other people as well, and did some solo stuff that was great, and had a son that had a hit as well. So and Plastic Ono Band did stuff as well. So he had quite a bit. He was, of course, a member of the Beatles, one of the founding members of the Beatles. I think it was the Quarrymen originally, and then they changed to the Beatles once they got moving along there. He was a peace activist, as I've said. I just want to read what I wrote here because it's kind of garbled. Just give me a second. Yeah, he had a bit of a rebelistic type nature to his character. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind and had strong opinions about certain aspects of society. And, I don't always agree 100% with what he had to say, but I respect the fact that he said it, He was part of maybe one of, if not the greatest music writing partnerships of all time with McCartney. The fact that they went different ways, I think it had more to do with their their natures. They were very different, and also McCartney was more of a mainstream type hit machine type guy, whereas John Lennon was more liked to write about stuff that maybe wasn't so mainstream or wasn't so popular. So it was very different, you know. It was something that probably wasn't going to last forever, and it didn't, of course. What else? Okay, so he started out with the playing the Skittle music, which was popular craze at the time in the 1950s, and then that progressively moved along into the Quarrymen, which then became the Beatles. That's how it went, as far as I know. There's one line here I wrote here. I got to read it up close. Okay, so he wrote a song called "All You Need Is Love," which then became the kind of symbol song, or the anthem for the anti-war movement. And this, of course, led to the Nixon administration trying to deport him from the country unsuccessfully. But they did try to kick him out of the country because they didn't need that. They didn't want that. They were having a war. That was it. But they tried to kick him out, and it didn't work. So, okay, he basically got married to his second wife, and they had a couple of kids, of course, and they did that Bed In for Peace, which I think it was done in Montreal. Anybody knows, let me know. I'm pretty sure I remember that being done in Montreal. So, and then, of course, that was in 1969 that happened. That was also the same year that he kind of left the Beatles and formed the Yoko Ono band, and he went solo. So it was a big year for him, I think. He also did some collaborations, which I didn't know about till I was researching this, with Elton John. Whatever Gets You Through the Night, he collaborated with Elton John on that. I think maybe they just wrote it together. And it was the same with David Bowie's Fame. He had some writing on that as well, some involvement on that song. There was a 5-year hiatus before they did Double Fantasy. I think he actually had a bit of a breakup with Yoko Ono for a couple years before, like 73 to 75. I want to say that's when it took place. Like, I don't remember 100%, but I think that happened. Then they released the Double Fantasy album in 1980, which was ironically his biggest selling album of all time. I don't know, would it have been his biggest selling album of all time if he hadn't been? He was killed 3 weeks later, gunned down by basically a madman who claimed to be a Beatles fan. I guess he didn't like his Beatles going solo. Anyways, the album has been rated as his number one album of all time, and I'm not sure that it would have beat Imagine if it wasn't for the fact that he'd been killed at this point in time. The other fact, there's a couple of facts here I think are very important that will tell you the impact of this man. He had 25 songs that reached number one that he either wrote or co-wrote. That's a lot of number one songs. I can't even think it. Is anybody else done even close to that? I don't know. You let me know. I know that some of the modern artists have claimed to have nine number ones or 8 number ones, but which is a lot. But did they actually co-write them or write them at all? I don't know. I don't know enough about them. Okay, he's also in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. Once with the Beatles in 1988, and then once as a solo artist in 1994. So there you have it. I liked John Lennon quite a bit. I think his music was pretty good. I wasn't a huge fan, as I'm not a huge fan of the Beatles. I do like some of their music. But to me, they're a band that's kind of in my mid-range of bands that I like to listen to. I actually prefer some of his solo stuff a little more. I liked he did a couple of songs that have been kind of songs that I like to sing quite a bit. Which one of them is "Stand by Me," which I think I really like quite a bit. And anyway, so and there you have it. So there's the three artists for tonight, all impactful in their own right. Bon Scott, of course, great vocalist, frontman for AC/DC, hard rock band, who I quite like quite a bit. John Bonham, one of the great drummers of all time, and in with Led Zeppelin, which is another band I like even more. Sorry, I'm trying not to yawn again. And then, of course, John Lennon, who was a member of the Beatles, who established rock as a band thing and music to be reckoned with, and put them on the charts, so to speak. And all kinds of stuff is branched out. All the stuff that I listen to and love today, I think stems back somehow to the Beatles and Elvis Presley. So there you have it, the three great musicians. Okay, and a couple of honorable mentions. Tommy Caldwell from the Marshall Tucker Band. Decided to throw him in there. I think he's pretty cool. And then Carl Rattle of Derek and the Dominoes. Sorry, I was drawing a blank. Yeah, Derek and the Dominoes. So Carl Rattle, and then of course, like I said, Tommy Caldwell. So there you have it. So this is episode 17. We'll be coming to you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in Canada. And I'm hoping people have some stuff to tell me that I maybe missed that might be of interest to me. I did learn a couple things today about John Lennon that I didn't know. I didn't know about those two songs that he did with Elton John and David Bowie. I know the songs, but I just didn't know that they had co-write them together. So there you have it. So if you like this video and you want me to do more of this stuff, and you enjoyed what I did today, please like and subscribe. And we'll be coming at you with another episode on Sunday. It'll be episode 18, I believe, in 1981. And I don't have my list of who's going to be on it, but I'm sure there'll be somebody. Yeah, of course. Anyways, this is Murph. Maybe a little punchy. Maybe a little bit tired, so I'm being a little punchy. This is Murph from Prog Monster. You have a great evening and enjoy the video tomorrow morning, and we'll see you again on Sunday for another series episode.